to work. Mr. Denham, fine. Mr. Denham. Well, good afternoon, and can you go ahead and close the door? Have a little quiet here. I'm Congressman John Mica, and I chair the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee in Congress. Mr. Denham is with me. He chairs the Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management Subcommittee. That subcommittee and our committee oversee the General Services Administration. This is another sad day for the taxpayers in the United States. We've got word of another major scandal dealing with GSA. This one is also on another conference. We've been given information from the United States Inspector General of the Office of GSA on a convention, a conference, a one-day conference that was held that expended more than $250,000 right across the water building here at Marriott and a hotel. Some of the expenses are just astounding. Again, you consider the difficult times that we're in, but the cost of this one-day conference for not that many participants included a whole host of questionable charges. There was a $7,697 commissioner's reception, hors d'oeuvres. They also had guitar and violin music, which we got a little guitar to illustrate what they did here. Then what's absolutely incredible is this $250,000 one-day conference spent a total of $20,578 for 4,000 drumsticks. I know this sounds almost unbelievable, but to have this kind of waste reported when we're running trillions of dollars of deficit makes absolutely everyone's blood boil in Congress, and I'm sure, again, the people who are working so hard out there to make ends meet. Additionally, and I don't know if they got them all, they've got some of these picture frames here, $28,000 for these picture frames, and $7,000, I think it was $40-some thousand in gifts. Of course, this has raised the ire of the Inspector General. The committee is appalled at learning again of this latest egregious waste of taxpayer dollars. We have assigned this morning two of our investigative staff, and our staff director of the subcommittee, Dan Matthews, will help be leading the investigation. So we will investigate. The Inspector General will continue his investigation. The other questionable charges in here, $140,000 for coordination and logistical management by one company. Again, just outrageous expenses at a time when we need to be conserving taxpayer dollars. We're going to take some additional steps to pursue this matter, and I'll yield now to the chair of the subcommittee, Mr. Denham from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, we are very disappointed to find out that there are more of these types of parties and lavish vacations that are throughout GSA. The question that came up during the Vegas vacation and that whole scandal was, is this just Region 9 or is this GSA-wide? We believe that this is government-wide. Certainly this is a culture within GSA. In this instance, rather than mind readers and clowns, they've got guitarists and violinists. You can see they're classing up their act, but it's still a blatant abuse of taxpayer dollars. And it's going to stop. We're going to continue to investigate, and we expect that each of these different agencies will actually at some point follow the president's own executive order to cut these conferences out, to cut these bonuses out, and to continue to do away with these awards programs. Taxpayers can't afford it, and they're not going to stand for it any longer. We're going to also be holding a hearing the week after next to dive deeper into the details of this and other investigations that are ongoing.
I might say too, if any of you want to look into the history of this, we did produce the report in October of 2010. The federal government must stop sitting on its assets. We led with the General Service Administration and its abuse, not only as far as administrative expenses, but also the incredible number of properties that they hold, 14,000 buildings with properties either vacant or partially vacant. Mr. Denham and I will be holding this is going to be our third or fourth hearing. We're going to do one in Miami shortly, and I believe we're going one in LA. I don't know if we've announced those, to try to highlight the billion-dollar waste. This is multi-million-dollar waste, that's billion-dollar waste. We also, from the very first hearing, this isn't Johnny and Jeff come lately, from the very first hearing, Mr. Denham, Mr. Mica, we have been asking GSA for details of administrative expenditures. We knew that there was something rotten in Denmark and GSA when we found a 300% increase in their administrative costs, and we are slowly getting information back now that confirms our worst suspicions that this agency is in fact has spun out of control, but we're going to get it under control. Questions?
Yes, when was this conference held?
The conference was, let's see, November 17th, 2010. We wrote the report in October, and then in October they were doing the Las Vegas, you know, the guy in the hot tub thumbing his nose at the taxpayers, the committee, and everyone. So that wasn't bad enough that they went to Las Vegas, and then Mr. Neely was turned over by a whistleblower, as you know, actually in November, and then this was held in November that same year. So we're slowly uncovering again the incredible abuses that took place. And they have thwarted almost consistently our requests. Only by Mr. Neely, again, I think, have we actually been able to unearth some of the details of the waste and abuse.
Can you speak to a moment of, it's obviously hard to defend mind readers and clowns and guitars and drumsticks, but what is the level? What is the level of appropriateness? Government is going to have events.
Yeah. Anybody here thinks
what's that line?
$20,000 for drumsticks is appropriate?
Right, but what's that line? I mean, what's the event? I mean, where do you cut off the event? Where do you cut
Well,
off
it
the
doesn't
event?
pass the smell test. It's sort of like somebody says pornography, you know what it is when you see it. When you see these drumsticks and somebody tells you government spent $20,000 to award these, that is offensive to the taxpayer. It's offensive to Mr. Denham, the chair, and myself. Should be to everybody else. Yeah.
Let me just address that real quick, Chad. This is, again, a culture within GSA. The biggest issue here is that GSA sets the standard for every other agency, and yet they're not even following the president's executive order, they're not even following their own GSA recommendations. So there has to be a limit. There has to be an end to it. You know, the simple recommendation for GSA is you've got all these empty buildings across the nation. Utilize some of those buildings to hold a conference in. Highlight what you're actually doing for the taxpayer. Be proud of the job that you're doing and highlight that rather than taking a vacation in Vegas or Maui or now here. So I think that they could certainly do more, and in setting the example, they ought to be using public buildings, public lands, national parks, rather than going out on these lavish things and spending money on lavish gifts.
Kind of following up on Chad's question, what is so outrageous about rewarding the top performers who qualify for bonuses?
Well, first of all, if you look at what they did, the president had issued an order to cut out some of the increases, and also they subverted that with bonuses, we found out. You may know that yesterday the agreement was reached, and the TSA has said they're stopping those bonuses finally. But they found different ways to subvert even the president's directives. this is an agency I'm not very happy with. We've got other issues this week. They have subverted the intent of Congress, even on leases and other things. And we're going to continue pursuing our investigation, not only on this waste, but other actions that they've taken, subverting the will of Congress and common sense for the taxpayers.
Who were the people that were at this conference? Were they local, did they fly in?
Well, we don't have all the details. I don't have all the details yet. Again, we just slowly. There were the travel expenses. They came from different places, and I don't know if it was a regional one or not. But you know, Dan,
It was national.
national.
We know
So
what
we
division.
there was 41,000 and
FAs.
42,000 approximately, and travel expenditures for 49 of the attendees. The commissioner's reception was for 200 attendees. We have different numbers on who participated in the different functions. But again, the expenses just, not only does it cause the Inspector General to launch an investigation, but our committee has that responsibility to get it under control. Every time we turn around, there's a new scandal in GSA.
Sorry if this is on your board, but which company handled or coordinated this event for the $140,000?
Okay, that one was, here it is, Gallagher and Gallagher.
What did they do for the $140,000?
That's what we're gonna try to find out. Probably not as much as you guys do in a day for the.
Do you
Is
know
there a
who
Jeff-
was, is there a Jeff Neely for this conference? I mean,
We don't know yet. That's, you know, you get the preliminary information. We've gotten it. We've assigned our investigators. We've begun the investigation. The IG has begun its investigation. And we will have a hearing, Mr. Denham said, in 2 weeks.
Week and a half.
Week and a half.
Did GSA talk about what this conference was for? Was it a training conference, like what they thought Las
I
Vegas
think
was?
it was sort of a employee reward and also sort of a employee motivation conference. And you need it's obvious you need a guitar and violinist and then you need drumsticks to give people for $20,000 for motivation.
And I think here's a point for the media. These are all questions you should be asking GSA. We've continued to ask, demand, hold hearing after hearing on all of these various issues for the last couple of years. And yet we have to get this information from an Inspector General. So we're gonna continue to dig. We're gonna hold them accountable. But those are questions you ought to be asking GSA. You know, if they wanna award bonuses to their employees, first of all, we disagree with that. We think you should be getting into public service because you actually wanna serve the public, not because you wanna pad your wallet. But if you're going to give a bonus, it ought to be a bonus based on performance. So show us what the goals and measurements are to hit that performance goal and how you're actually saving money for the taxpayers. Then maybe GSA could justify it to the taxpayer if there was actually a savings. But this blatant waste and abuse of taxpayer dollars is just unacceptable. So, you know, again, we're holding a hearing on this to subpoena those within GSA to talk to them about what they are and are not doing. But we will continue to also use the Inspector General's office to investigate all of these to find out not only how many of these parties went on, but how deep within government it actually goes. We know that it's throughout GSA. This is no longer just a regional issue. This is an issue within all of the culture of GSA. We want to see how far that goes out into government and how high it goes.
You mentioned subpoena. Are you actually going to subpoena them, or you're saying that's just on the table?
We obviously always hope that we never have to swear in a witness or subpoena a witness, but as you can see, they've certainly been withholding information to us. For us to have to go to an Inspector General to get information that is nearly 2 years old is unacceptable for this committee and unacceptable for this chairman, and certainly unacceptable for the taxpayers. So we will.
Well, again, we knew something was wrong. When Mr. Dunham took over the subcommittee, I took over the chair. We knew something was wrong at GSA. When you have a 300% increase in administrative expense, and every hearing, I'd say every single hearing, we have been asking for details. We've sent them communications. Now, some of that is surfacing, but it's only because of the attention that the media has focused on Neely made it famous, thumbing his nose at everyone. But look at that, still would be hidden. The information on that was given from the Inspector General before. Remember, he came in, he was called in, the incident was in October. He was called in November, alerted. He went back to GSA in May of the next year and briefed them. In June, he also briefed the White House counsel, and it was still covered up. The only way that we found out about this is the whistleblower went back after again a whole year had transpired, not a whole year, but from October to June. After that time frame had expired, and Mr. Neely had gotten away with all that stuff, and then he planned additional trips all over the place at great expense. She blew the whistle once again. That's when, again, the lid got blown. Now, more information is coming out on that waste. This is the second example.
When did the OIG launch this investigation into this
Right.
particular organization?
Well, I don't know all the details. Again, I don't know when they got it. They have not told us exactly when they got it, but they have informed us. We've assigned our investigators, so we'll be doing our investigation, they'll be doing theirs.
What again is the link between a conference that may be wasteful and the inability to unload the excess federal properties?
What's the link?
Yeah,
Well, the link is we couldn't get this many people to come out when we did our first hearing in the empty building in 32 degrees. No one paid any attention. Then we did our second hearing in the Cotton Annex. There were 2 trade journals that showed up. That had been vacant for 5 years. This is, I said, millions of dollars worth of waste. We're talking about billions of dollars worth of waste. And Mr. Denham and I have said, we've done, and some of you went out to the power plant, 2.08 acres in Georgetown behind the Ritz-Carlton, vacant for 11 years. And the cockamamie tales they told us. When did they put it on the market? Yesterday, the day before the hearing, they hung the for sale sign. That was their marketing. I mean, this is almost some sort of a comedy routine. But there's I can't tell you how many millions of dollars that property is, some of the most valuable. We're going to Miami, we're gonna go to Los Angeles. Our target was, we had 14,000 properties. And then we X'd off, we've been to 3 so far, so stick with us, guys.
What's your evaluation?
And let me just follow up on that. The bigger issue is that the bureaucracy, GSA being probably the biggest part of that, trying to subvert the will of Congress. When you actually have to pass a law to force them to sell a building that has been declared excess for over a decade, there's an issue there. When they go out and do a $351 million lease, well beyond the law that says that they have to come to Congress if it's over a $2.4 million lease, when they go around Congress on those leases, and then ultimately, when they have these vacations against our president's executive order, we have an issue. We have an issue with the bureaucracy that is trying to subvert the will of the taxpayer.
How do you evaluate the new
Last 2
administrator?
questions, Juan.
What's your evaluation of the new administrator that was brought in when the old one resigned after the conference was over?
We have tried to work with him today. We were doing very well until this week. Mr. Denham described an issue, you guys don't know all the details, about him subverting our process. We're talking now with appropriators and others to take some steps. I may look at some legislation to take GSA out of the property management business, period. It's just, they're out of control. They cannot, okay, how many of you guys that own any property would turn it over to the federal government to manage? Raise your hand. Okay, we have an overwhelming,
They do a better job than you think. I mean, I think it's unfair. Part of this problem is you, not you personally, but Congress. You
Congress
make
is-
rules
yeah.
that they cannot sell the properties.
No, we don't make rules,
Yes,
we
you-
make laws.
Sorry.
We make laws.
They enforce your laws.
But there, again, I wouldn't say it's without blame,
But you're
but
blaming
there are so many opportunities. And part of it is that it's inert, it's like most government, they are not initiators. I've tried to work with the
That's
post
fair.
office to get rid of
idle properties. No one can think in some of these agencies, or they're afraid to move, or sometimes Congress puts some constraints, you're very right. But you have to take all that into account, and then you change the laws that either put those constraints on there, or you direct the agency to take action, and we're doing that, just that.
And when the administration offered their civilian BRAC, it doesn't get moved. I mean, you have a bill that hasn't been moved yet. I mean,
Exactly.
right, there's no
And the
political will on
president,
either
if the
side.
president wants to remove the hurdles to be able to sell buildings off immediately, he needs to invoke a little bit of leadership and tell the Senate to move the bill. If both houses can agree to it, if both parties can agree to it, then why won't the president ask for the bill and get it moved into law so that we can actually sell some of these properties?
What does he say to you?
He
I have not
hasn't
talked to
spoken-
the president directly on the issue.
He hasn't spoken to me,
Did you get,
Mr.
did
Chairman,
you get briefed on the St.
Uh,
Louis, conference that was canceled,
no,
on the GSA?
sorry if
that-
I missed this. When
last question.
when did the IG come to you with this? When did you receive this?
Just this morning.
This morning, okay, that's why the late notice.
Yes.
Yes.
Otherwise, we would have had you all for lunch. We were gonna have a lavish buffet.
On the defense of GSA.
Thank you.